Hello, this is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe. Today's video is going to be going over what possibly happened in the early morning hours of February 1st, 2026, the morning that Nancy Guthrie was abducted from her residence in Tucson, Arizona, which is in southern Arizona. So to get started on this, let's take a look at this right here. This is her residence. And there's the backyard with grass. And there's a swimming pool. And the front door is right there. Now, at a press conference, early on, I think it was on the 5th of February, Nanos and FBI gave a press conference. That's the last one they gave. They gave a timeline. All right, now we have that timeline right here. And it's just a short, maybe 3 minutes video here, and we'll discuss each element as it comes along.
This is a timeline that we have been able to develop with some of the things that we've had processed. Various pieces of electronics that we've gathered.
So apparently this is all from electronics, so we keep that in mind when we think about the garage door that he mentions at 9:48 and 9:50 on the night of January 31st, after Nancy returned home after visiting her daughter Annie, playing mahjong, eating dinner, etc. All right, so let's play this right now.
You look at some of this, and I know you're going to say, well, why did it take you so long to get this to us, Sheriff? Well, because one thing, it's got to go out and be processed at different lab sites, and sometimes that stuff comes back to us, and like you, we have questions. And we say, wait a minute, what is this about? What about this? Could it be that? And so it's sent back, or it's sent somewhere else. So, and that's happening with all of the things we see, that process, that review, and that questioning of, all right, what is it we're looking at? So I'll go over it with you. You can see it on the board there, but at about 5:32 p.m., these are approximate times. 5:32 p.m., Nancy travels to her local family's home for dinner and playing games with the family, and just visiting.
And they actually interviewed the Uber driver that gave her a ride over there at 5:32.
At 9:48 p.m., which is very consistent to what we were told by the family, that Nancy was dropped off at home, and we know that because we have a garage door open at approximately, I can't stress that enough, at approximately 9:48 p.m.
Right, so that must have been something electronically that they figured out that the garage door opened at approximately 9:48. So that's interesting. You wonder if the surveillance camera on the garage side of the pool house actually had some motion that it detected that they're not mentioning. It didn't detect a person, but maybe it detected a motion, and that's 9:48 and 9:50, or the garage doors themselves, when you activate it, have some internal mechanism that has the time associated with it. I'm not sure why they're saying approximate time. I guess if it's not a clock that is connected to like a Wi-Fi or something like that, then it's possible it's off by some minutes.
At 9:50 p.m., that garage door closes.
So I think they're pretty certain, though, that it is right around 9:48 and 9:50, and then the garage door shuts at 9:50.
Because that time we assume that Nancy's home and probably going to bed. Sunday morning, early morning at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects.
Okay, so when the doorbell camera disconnects at 1:47, I think that's right after this video right here. And disconnect means it's no longer in play in this story and timeline that we have. It's disconnected. That means it doesn't connect again, or I think they would have said that in the timeline, that, oh, the doorbell camera reconnects at so-and-so. It doesn't. So it feels like that's the time where the doorbell camera disconnects. Now, it's possible that since this press conference on February 5th, the timeline might be significantly different, that they can fill it in with different little elements of videos and different motions that were captured, but at the time, this is what they had. All right. Now, one thing interesting about this is the person is actually coming from the left in this video. See their right foot back there. Let me just play it here. So I'll go backwards. Watch where he comes from. So we talked about this early on, that he comes in from the left, but it's just always interesting to put that back in there. Now, we don't know what that means. Does that mean that he came from off to the side over there, and maybe that's where he parked his car, and this is where he's first arriving, or did he go around the side of the house? So what we're looking at right here is he's coming in from this angle in like this. Now, maybe he was looking through some of these windows. There does seem to be a camera right here on that building, and there's also another camera right there. And I think this one would film the driving area where the garage door is, and then this camera would film out here. There doesn't appear to be any cameras that were filming around in this area. This one over here could likely pick up people even in the swimming pool if we come down to that height just about, and you can see even from that angle you can see the pool over there. So there you go. I think that could film a motion back in the pool area.
At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on a camera, but there's no video available. They had no subscription, and therefore it would rewrite itself. It just kind of loops, right, and covers up.
So it appears that at 2:12 is the next time that there's any motion at all. So it seems like that's about the time that somebody entered the back of the house. Nanos here in a second sort of slips up a little bit. You can see this FBI agent back here. Look at him. You'll see here in a second.
That's what our analysis teams have told us. We're not done with that. We'll do all we can, but that's what it says. So it detects a person on camera. Could that be an animal? I
See that? Look at that guy. Could that be an animal? And this guy looks right over at him. Because when you say could that be an animal, that means his subconscious is letting us know that the camera's outside. If the camera was inside, would he even say that? Would it cross his mind to say, could it be an animal? We don't know.
Imagine that's possible. We don't know that. We just have no video.
Right, so they don't have any video. That's 2:12. So I think that, given the information we have, it likely isn't this camera here, but I can't tell you that it isn't. And maybe it very well could be this camera that's on that building. Now let's take a look at that camera location. So here is an image that's out there. I just clipped this off of Ashley's video that she just put out recently. But I believe that's a surveillance camera right there. I've seen a better photograph of it. And this right here is a floodlight, but that is, I believe, a surveillance camera. And so maybe that's the one that picked him up at 2:12. And then, he tried to open this gate. So maybe it took a while to open up this gate. And then he goes inside around the corner and then eventually enters into the home. And that's a little bit close up, but it's equally blurry right there. But that, I believe, is a surveillance camera. So if we were to look from outside, the surveillance cameras were here. And then one right over here. That's the one we saw them moving around, on the roof and repositioning and taking it off at one point. And then there's another camera, obviously the doorbell camera, right inside there.
But we're not giving up on that. 2:28. Nancy's pacemaker app shows that it was a disconnect from the phone.
So let me know in the comments which one of those two outdoor cameras do you think set that motion off at 2:12, and then explain your theory on that. But I think that the 2:12 motion is the indicator of the approximate time frame that the abductor snuck into the backyard and then eventually enters the house.
And at 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Nancy, discovers her missing, and at 12:03 p.m., 911 is called in to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. I believe it's about approximately 10 minutes later, 12 minutes later, our patrol teams arrive. They see the scene, and we start our response with our search and rescue teams and our detectives from homicide and various units. In fact, every unit here, I think somebody questioned, how come there's an ICAC member out here, or this member? Everybody in our criminal investigations team is a part of this team and part of this investigative effort.
All right, so there's the portion of the press conference that talked about the timeline. So at 2:28, the pacemaker app shows disconnect from phone. Okay, now they didn't ever say that it shows that it reconnects to the phone, so it likely means that that is the last time that Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker ever connected to the base unit there in the home. And she hasn't been found or seen since. And then at 11:56 a.m. the same morning, the family goes over and checks on Nancy because she was supposed to show up to a live viewing of her daughter Savannah's church service in New York, and I guess they rotate around to different houses to do that, and she didn't show up. So those people called Annie, and then they drove over there at 11:56, and because of the condition and what was going on in the house, and mainly just because she's not even there, and that her phone is there, and her watch is there, and apparently her shoes, etc., they end up calling 911 at 12:03. So that's just 7 minutes later, and then they actually arrived at the scene 8 minutes after that at 12:15 p.m. All right, so let's work through this. At 1:47, the individual is seen on Ring doorbell camera. Now there's another image of the same person. I guess if we go back to this frame right here, that's apparently the same person but on a different night. There's different things that are different. There's no shadow over here. I mean, I guess apparently it could be earlier in the evening. We don't know. Some people point out the little difference maybe on the shoe, but it's really too blurry to make out anything down there at all. But this is probably a different day completely. And, we still don't know the exact reason why they're looking for February 11th, and I think it was the 24th or 26th. I can't remember the exact date on the second half there. But they are, maybe there was a motion captured on that back camera late at night that detected a person. So if we look at this, at 1:47, the person goes to the front door and manipulates the camera. And we'll just play the video right here. So he comes in. Now they've released multiple clips out there. And if we start back over here, we see him coming in. And then notice his left foot plants there. And then there's another clip they released that it just pops into this position. But that's exactly the same clip. You're just missing from his left foot there to his left foot there. So maybe a half second. All right. And it's the same clip. Look at his right foot is exactly planted and doesn't move whatsoever. What? See that? So that means there's just like a half second missing from the clip. I don't know if that means that little portion was written over, or if that just means, like these cameras aren't perfect and there's just a slight glitch missing half a second there. All right, then the person comes over, and then that's the camera. He's literally got his hand near the top of the doorbell camera. And right there, people thought that originally that he was trying to reach down to open up the door with his hand there, but it's not. His hand is literally at the bottom of the camera. And we can see that better if I go to this one here. See, when you come in, you can see the doorknobs are right there. So he's not touching that. He's just touching the bottom of the doorbell camera itself. So right around this time is when it was removed. See that right there? And that's going to be 1:47. So maybe this is 1:46, something like that. But it was removed, and that means it's out of play. Then later on, right around 2:12, a camera picks up a person. Now, if it's this camera here, right on the corner of the building, right there, And maybe he took some time in trying to open up the door right here, this gate, unlocking it, because apparently Ashley Banfield's source said that that one was propped open too. So maybe it picked up motion there. He opens up that gate and then goes back here. But there's also this camera. So it's also possible that that camera picked up the motion at 212 because the person does go back here. And in fact, there's two doors underneath here. And it turns out, we were saying on the show, I don't know, right when the information came out that doors were propped open, and we discovered that there was a door right here. And I thought it was likely propped open with one of the plants that's sitting there. So that turns out to be the case, according to one of Ashley Banfield's sources. So right there, there's a door right through there. You can't see it. And then there's another door right over there. And then right over here is a door. And remember, right there, there was a floodlight. And that one has been broken. So I think that's the motion sensor of the floodlight. Looks like they even tried to like turn it and remove it. And then those are the lights broken off. So they probably wanted it to be really dark back there. So I would imagine that was one of the first things that they did when they got back there, was to break that light so that while they're trying to get into the house, they weren't seen by the neighbors across the way. They wanted it as dark as possible back there. And any time that that would go off, I'm sure it would, make it really lit up back there, and maybe neighbors or a dog might bark or something like that. But as soon as you turn it off or break it, then it's going to be pitch black back there. So eventually the kidnapper goes inside the house and goes in this door right there, and then has to make their way over to Nancy's room, which is right over in this area. It's right over here. And we know that that's the window that's inside of her room, and this is the slider that goes out to the private patio. And then there's another sliding glass door here that goes into the living room, where there's a fireplace. We've shown images of that in the past. And here is that living room right here. There's a living room. There's the sliding glass door that goes out to the private patio, and there's the window in the front of the house to the left of the fireplace when you're looking at it. So if we go up in the air, there's the window left of the fireplace looking at it like that. And then there's the slider that goes out to the private patio, and then it goes into Nancy's room right there. Yeah, so putting this all together, I think that if there is a second person in this case, I think that they are merely the driver. And that device in his pocket could be a walkie-talkie, could also be a police scanner. We don't know. But if you were going to theorize that there was another person, I think that might be where a second person is driving the vehicles. So he walks up to the house right here, and he removes the camera at 147. He did that because he knows eventually he's going to be parking a car right here. That's the only reason he removed that camera. He didn't care that he was being recorded while he had his balaclava on, etc. when he was going in, and there'd be no reason to hide the fact that he's abducting Nancy Guthrie, because he in fact abducted her and she wouldn't be there. And he knows that he's going to be filmed. The reason that he removed the camera is that his vehicle would be easily identified in terms of make and model if it had pulled up right there. And that's where he wanted to put it for easy removal of Nancy Guthrie from her home. And that's actually the closest way out. Now, her bedroom is right there, so I imagine her door is somewhere over here maybe in the house. And that'd be a long ways to take her out the back door, around the gate here, and then into a car. And that's not what happened. We know that she went out the front door because her blood is seen on droplets over here. We've seen those pictures a million times. And then there's droplets that make its way all the way to here, and then they stop. That's because she was put into a car right there. But at 147, after the camera was removed, they would have wanted to wait around, or perhaps if you put somebody in a vehicle and you have somebody in a vehicle, they're the lookout for you. So, you leave for a while just in case, but then you go back to the house and they can continue to look out. So after waiting about 20 minutes or so, the person comes back, and then at 2:12, they go into the backyard. And then maybe this other individual that's driving the car, if that is the case, is waiting and watching, and will let him know if somebody's coming, and that's why he propped open the back doors so he could run out and get away. So he even propped open this side gate, apparently, according to Ashley Banfield, as well. So maybe he thought he could get out and run and go in a different direction. Perhaps they had the car parked over here somewhere. We don't know exactly where the car was parked, but at a certain point, either the one individual or a person that he's working with pulled the car up to this location, and then inside the house, after he confronted Nancy Guthrie, he took her out of the home. But I would say that at right around 2:12, either this camera right here or this camera pick up the individual going into the backyard, and then after, who knows how long it actually took to make it into the house. We've heard that the doors were unlocked, etc. But there must have been time taken to prop open the door, etc. And then the individual goes into the house and then confronts Nancy, I would imagine, at like 2:14, 2:15. On the timeline, I'm sure her heart monitor, there'd be massive changes to her heart rate, etc. On it. So they know exactly when she confronted the person. So after a little bit of time, they take her out. Now, we don't know what they were doing for the 10 minutes or so. So maybe it took longer to get into the house than we previously thought. We just don't know exactly what was going on. But at 2:28, after you're at least 10 feet or further away from the base unit for her heart monitor, because you got to realize the Bluetooth is inside of your chest, so it's not like this really powerful signal. So you have to be within 10 feet of the base unit, and then her cell phone actually shows that her pacemaker disconnected from that unit at 2:28. So that means that she's at least 10 feet or more away, so that could even still be in the house at that point. That could be in the house. So they move her out, and they go this direction, and she never connects again to the unit inside the house. Walked down here, put into the car, and then the vehicle drove off, leaving the back doors wide open. And when they say doors, they're really referring to, I guess there's two doors that were open and a gate. So back here is, that side door that was right there. There's actually one of those metal security doors, and then the door for the house. The door for the house opens inward, and the security door opens outward. And both of those are open. So it doesn't make sense for somebody living there to have both of those open when the metal security door is actually like a screen door as well. So you could just have that one shut and locked, and cool air would come into the house, etc. But it was really cold that night. I think right around 40 degrees. I don't know if she would want to be doing that. And that's just not what happened. Apparently, she just leaves doors unlocked, and both of those doors were open. And then they were propped open. So the internal door, I don't know if that one needed to be propped open. That one you can probably just swing open and it would stay. The security door probably has some sort of a hinge where it automatically shuts itself, and probably needed to have that propped up with the plants outside. So leave comments in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think about all this. I think it's a really fascinating case, to be honest with you. Trying to put together, I think we're really close to what was going on in the time frame based on the timeline, the videos that are available, and newer information that keeps coming out. We know that the blood droplets in the house were the same type of drops that you see at the front. So if we go over into this area here, like this kind of droplets like this. Now this over here, I believe, is expirated blood spatter over here, not satellite like so many people seem to say. think this is expirated blood spatter. I think she was walked out at gunpoint. I do see areas where there's no blood droplets. That could be where her foot is. When your own blood is dripping down, it's going to hit you or the ground. You're not stepping on it. So she's moving out, and I think at gunpoint she's forced out and forced to walk this direction, and made it all the way. There's blood droplets even right there, and made it all the way to here and was put into the vehicle and driven away. But yeah, the blood droplets apparently start inside the house. So if you were to open up this door, right inside there were blood droplets. Then the door opens, and then there's blood droplets. Maybe she didn't want to be removed from the home and sort of fought a little bit and was, hit in the face or something like that, started bleeding. We've also talked about that she could have been hit in the nose earlier and it hadn't built up enough to start dripping out, and then started dripping out when she came out the door. All right, but then she eventually gets put into a car and driven away, and there's been no proof of life since she was removed from that house. All right, so leave me a note in the comment. Let me know what you think is going on here. But again, like I said, I think it's an interesting case. It's interesting on its own. It became popular because of Savannah Guthrie, but I think people now hardly even think of that angle. It's just the case itself is really interesting. An 84-year-old woman taken from her residence in the middle of the night with very little information. Apparently inside it looks like she just got out of bed and there's nothing turned over, nothing's missing. It's as if she was sleeping, stood up, and walked out, except for the blood spatter that they found, or the blood droplets. So I think that's interesting. It's almost like they got in there and said, "Get up," and just had her walk out barefoot, in her pajamas, out the front and into the car. Why these people did this? It could just be an abduction for ransom that went wrong. But we don't know the actual motive behind it. But I think that's the most likely theory, is an abduction for ransom that went wrong. And then there's multiple other ones that we've talked about. I don't believe in any of the, like a burglary gone wrong. It makes no sense at all. Could it be a sexual assault? That's a possibility that they removed her because of that. Knowing how DNA works now, everybody knows that. So you'd have to remove the body if you had left DNA on her. But I don't know. In this case, this doesn't seem to add up. I think this is an abduction for ransom that went wrong. All right. So again, leave comments in the comments section. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. And if you hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. So thanks again. And as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.